Wow.
Clerk will call the roll.
Glenn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Andy H. Lynn, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Fickus, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
And J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Constitutes a quorum.
Our invocation today will be delivered by Pastor Trey Grant from the Well Church in Keller. Thank you for the coming out today for the invocation. And after the invocation, please remain standing for our pledges.
Let us pray. Almighty God, the creator of heaven and earth, the one who spoke this world into existence, the one by whom we live, breathe, and have our being. We rise up to meet you this morning, even as the day rises up to meet the sun. Father, we first pray for our great city, the city of Fort Worth. I pray, Father, that you will be the guiding power and authority by which every decision is made today. I pray for our judge and our commissioners who are in this room and all other elected officials. I pray that you might give them wisdom to discern and knowledge to govern, that they might govern with the balance of truth, justice, unity, and grace, just as you govern us. Father, might we all be reminded day after day that, and even during these proceedings, that we live in a broken world full of broken people, and that every one of us, including myself, are in desperate need of a Savior. We thank you that you've provided that Savior for us in the person and work of your Son, that though we are broken, we might go from broken to beautiful because of your love, your grace, your mercy for us. We ask these things in the same Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you in the Holy Spirit, one God forever and ever. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Pastor, for being here today. Manus, agenda announcements.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, we have one announcement as it relates to the agenda itself. That's under the administrator section. It will be item A3, the amended travel and meeting policy. We made one minor correction on that particular policy, and it is that there's a new court communication in your red folder on that. Just a few other announcements. First of all, today we're going to have a work session that's going to start at approximately 12 o'clock. It'll be here in the in the Commissioner's courtroom. And we figured that should last about 2 to 2.5 hours. We also have an IT steering committee this afternoon at 3 o'clock. It'll be in the Family Law Center. And then finally, members of the court, just for your information, we did hold our pre-bid conference yesterday on the JPS-related RFP, and we had 40 firms that attended. We had 53 attendees of those 40 firms, and we had a great assembly of national firms that came, and so I think we're off to a very good start. Thank you.
Court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular meeting of May the 3rd.
Move approval.
Second.
A motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. We have today 3 resolutions resolutions. The first is one that we presented last week to Ms. Farmer as a surprise one. So I will move for its ratification.
Second.
We have a motion second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Fickus.
Yes, I have 2
I want to submit for ratification only. The first one is to the Smithville United Methodist Church, celebrating their 160th anniversary, which was presented to them on Saturday. And the second is to the city of Hurst, Anna Holzer. Anna is retiring. She's served 24 years as a city council member, but probably another 20 as a P&Z and head of the library committee, and she served well over 40 years the city of Hurst, and we'll be presenting that tomorrow afternoon, I think at 4 o'clock. So.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. I'm not going to be able to make that tomorrow, but please tell Anna, congratulations. She kind of trained me on the Planning and Zoning Commission in Hurst many years ago. So she has been really one of those dedicated public servants for so many years. Court members, you have before you the consent agenda.
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Manus.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, we have two additional items we'd like to bring to you this morning under the administrator section. The first is a recognition and to receive and file the presentation of the Gfoa Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. This is to the County Auditor's Office.
Rachel, would you bring me that certificate off my desk? I hope she's listening. Renee, would you please come forward? I've got it, and I'll get it, because I kind of asked GK if we couldn't, and GK kind of came in and said, you might want to think about this.
How about Suzanne and Laura come up and the rest of you, please? This isn't about me, this is about them.
This is a great number of years in a row, straight years. Do you know how many?
Since 98.
1998.
Since 1998.
98.
They had it for several years prior to my coming, and then there were several years in between that they did not. And then we started that in 1998. And consistently done that. I felt that with some of the negative press for some of our associates in government in other cities and municipalities, which we won't name, that couldn't keep up with where their money was, and so they couldn't close their books, they couldn't sell debt. All those things that are so important to a governmental entity, that we should recognize the individuals at the county that make sure y'all are able to do what you need to do. And that would be people in the back who support these two ladies, Suzanne McKenzie and Laurel Beast. And they work untold hours, tirelessly, and are very dedicated and passionate about what they do. And I felt like they deserve to be recognized.
And I want to add, I mean, these are the I know y'all may not like bean counters. I love bean counters. We are bean counters, and details mean something to us, and getting the numbers in the right place and knowing how to account for it is very important. And as Renee mentioned, there are a lot of folks who just don't do a good job about it, and the folks that you see standing here, under the direction of Renee, take this extremely seriously. And as Renee kind of alluded, there are organizations that pay millions of dollars to have somebody else come in and do it for them. And we don't. And we don't because these folks take very seriously the jobs that they do, and I can't say enough good things about them and what they do. So, thank you for everything. Thank you for the way you do it. It means a tremendous amount, I think, to the county. And I certainly want to thank y'all for that.
Absolutely.
I move to receive and file. Second.
I think he went to find a certificate.
Okay, get them back up here. It's kind of like, you know, they say that it's not a messy desk if you know exactly where it is. Well, it was a messy desk, but I knew exactly where it was. So y'all get back up there, all of you. All of you. This is really something to be very proud of. And you know, there's not a whole lot of organizations that get this year after year after year. So,
From one bean counter
you
to
do.
another.
What was that?
From one bean counter to another.
You are right. Okay, get in here, come up. Now, wait a minute, here, you hold it, I'll. Thank y'all again.
Excellent.
I'm very, very proud.
Judge, we already have a motion to receive and file.
And a second.
Just need to be voted on.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Members of the court, we can go to item 2. We're requesting that the Commissioners Court approve Amendment Number 5 to the Texas Juvenile and Juvenile Case Management System based on the 2013 Resource Sharing Addendum. This particular amendment extends the fiscal year until December 31st. There's no fiscal impact.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have motion and second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Ms. Glenn.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Glenn.
We have 2 items for the court this morning. The first item, we're asking the court to receive and file the personnel agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have motion and second to receive and file the personnel agenda. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our second and final item, we're asking the court to approve amendment number 13 to the Senior Supplement Plan Group Health Insurance Policy and amendment number 10 to the Medicare Advantage Health Plan Terms and Conditions Agreement between United Healthcare, Pacific Care, and Tarrant County. The court may recall that these plans and the rates were approved in September of last year for this year for 2016, and there were no plan changes to either plan.
Move approval.
Second.
We have motion and second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. And come on forward. Vinny out chasing mosquitoes?
Actually, he's out with his wife because they had their baby yesterday.
You better not be out chasing mosquitoes.
No, I know. We have a little trouble keeping you on track being the new dad, but they had a little boy yesterday.
So he didn't have
no,
nothing.
he didn't. No, he was emailing me, and I'm like, put your phone down because she's in labor, So
So a little
anyway.
boy? You say a little boy?
They had a little boy. His name is Arnav, and he is 8 pounds, and everybody's doing well.
Big boy.
Big boy, yes. And there's a big sister who is probably going to have quite an adjustment period. Well, this morning we have just one request from Public Health, and we're asking for approval of the Managed Care Provider Agreement with Magnum Health Plan, Inc. and Magnum Insurance Company, Inc. for delivery of comprehensive health, public health services like immunizations, STD services, TB, HIV services. We've brought a number of these to court, and we just keep trying to add those so that we can expand our services.
Move approval.
Second.
A motion and second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. We
Thank
won't
you.
get after you for violating HIPAA or anything like that.
All righty. Thank you.
And tell him congratulations for that.
Will do.
Mr. Beecham.
Your Honor, as purchasing comes up, I failed to advise the court on the agenda issues that under purchasing F3, RFP 2016-003 will not be considered today.
Will what?
will not be considered today.
Go.
We have two items for your consideration this morning. Our first item is a bid award recommendation for bid 2016-109, our annual contract for miscellaneous medical supplies and disposals for the Public Health Department. Recommendation will be toward a price basis, according to the primary, secondary vendors, meeting all specifications as shown accordingly.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Second and last item is an item in regards to RFP 2016-058. It's an RFP for construction manager at risk services for the Juvenile Center project. We are seeking approval from the court to conduct negotiations with Steele and Freeman and Burns Construction Services.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, just a quick question. Because of the way I see them listed, I'm assuming that Steele Freeman is number one.
Yes, sir.
And if you can't work it with
Yes,
them,
sir.
then you drop down to Burn.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Saturday, auction.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Hosted by Precinct 4. Viewing is at 9 o'clock. This is probably will be the largest auction we've had in the last 10 years. There are quite a few vehicles, equipment. Renee Bates, our auctioneer, has actually advertised nationwide, and the weather's supposed to cooperate, and love to see you out there. Commissioner Johnson, all you.
We've done this last weekend. We might have been able to get our wives a ring or something.
The viewing is at 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock, yeah. 8 o'clock, auction starts at 9, but we'll give you a tally next Tuesday. Thank you.
If he'd had this last week, we could have gotten a ring for our wives from Mother's Day or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you could have, front end loader.
Got her a front end loader. I don't think I'd want to do that. Are there any appointments today? I believe Commissioner Johnson?
I have one, after so many years, Susan Crenshaw is throwing in the towel on Child Protective Services Board. And I have a replacement, Linda Garcia. And don't let the address mislead you. She doesn't live in Aledo. She lives in Lost Creek, which is Fort Worth, but her mailing address is Aledo. But I would move to appoint her to replace Susan Crenshaw.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Linda will do an excellent job, I think. She's with ACH and they do tremendous work. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Any other appointments? And you have before you the claims, including the addendum.
Move approval of the claims, including the addendum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Briefing items, Mr. Manius?
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the Court, we have two items we'd like to bring to you this morning. The first concerns electronic payment processing update. Ms. Tidwell is here to address the court at this time.
Thank you, ma'am.
We've got, yeah, it's the same one.
I think you already have it in your packet.
All right, good morning.
Good morning.
Sometime back, the Information Technology Department initiated a project to discuss a countywide vendor for processing credit cards or electronic payment processing. There were 3 vendors that hosted demonstrations. They were all, 2 of them are the current vendors and one was a vendor who's not currently on board. And they came in because part of the discussion is that there's a well-defined industry and that these vendors could assist us in defining and helping us craft our scope of work. So then the discussion, IT continued to have discussion, and they actually solicited requirements from the various departments to format and provide the basis for an RFP. Since that time, just so you know, the county clerk has expressed that they intend to move forward on their own at this point, I guess, because the process has been slowed down somewhat. There is something here that I'll need you to consider as we go through this and get to the end. So I'll be looking for guidance from you on that. At some point in time, IT, and it became associated with others that maybe I could be the executive sponsor for this process. And part of the reason for that is the local government code is very clear about that the auditor is responsible for accounting policies, procedures, accounting systems, etc. I don't have a definitive answer in what we choose, but I do have some real concerns about one of the concepts that was presented, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. Most vendors, the way they process credit cards, it doesn't matter whether it's Chase Bank or a much smaller institution, they're simply acting as a processor on behalf of the merchant, and the merchant is the county. We're the merchant. There is a particular vendor out there, and there may be more than one, but there is one of the vendors out there that we spoke with that goes under the concept that they are the merchant. Okay? So for the most part, if you think about it, they step in front of us and have a different role. We become maybe a sub-merchant. That's Renee's term for what we become. But there's some risk here that are spelled out. And for the most part, it's kind of like a line of credit. This came out of the DA's office a while back, that the merchant service provider then is acting as an underwriter, doesn't have to be a financial institution. It's certainly allowed by law. There are other governmental entities throughout the country that may utilize this model. I have some concerns, though, related not only to the county funds, but the state funds and the fiduciary funds that the county collects. If we went out for a countywide RFP, my main concern about that is if we selected one vendor for the county, and that one vendor was not acceptable or a good fit for everyone, because we do have a lot of diverse departments that could take receipts. The only choice that the departments would have would be to go with the one that was selected or to stay with the one that they had until that contract expired. So again, public health and the tax assessor's office don't have anywhere near the same requirements or the same needs. And so to say, it's nice to think we're going to have one vendor, but that may not be the best answer for the county. So I'm not moving the page down. This is just a chart so you can kind of see where the dollars are for where we take credit cards and who the vendors currently are to date. The tax office, of course, is the bulk of the receipts. Last year, you can see there towards the bottom, they took in over $120 million via credit cards. And through March of this year, they've already taken in the $82 million. Some of that money, of course, is not county money. A significant portion of it belongs to all of the other various entities within Tarrant County that the tax assessor collects for. And then you have some very small collections listed there from the medical examiner's office, obviously even to the law library, et cetera, that really don't have a large volume, but they still need to be able to take credit cards. And the
Now,
next
in most of these, let me ask, in most of the credit card deals, am I correct in the assumption that if, let's say it was a $100 fee that they're paying for on the credit card, in most instances, do we then put a 3%, if the company is charging a 3% fee, do we put that on top of so that we still net our $100?
Yes.
Or I know we do that in the tax office,
Yes.
but do all the other departments do that also?
We don't take, as far as I know, we don't have anyone that we pay the commission for, the fee.
3% goes on top of it.
Right, the 3% goes on
So
top.
whatever the fee is, it may be
Right.
3, it may be 2.5, whatever it is, we put it on top of
Right,
the deal.
right.
Okay.
So then the next page is just a little bit further look at property tax, only because it is so large as far as what they take in, and that breaks out the county's portion, which is really very small, the $8 million compared out of the $74 million. Because on the previous page, you had motor vehicle combined with property tax. That's why the number is $124 million for the tax office on the previous page, and on this page, it's just property taxes.
Okay.
And then we get to our little diagrams. Okay, this is the way the world is today, for the most part. Processing credit cards can be fairly difficult to understand, so we've tried to make this very simple. So there's certainly not everything included here that goes on. But what happens is within 2 to 3 days, the money is sent to the county depository or Chase Bank. There's a lot of reconciliation, there can be chargebacks, there can be other things that go on, but for the most part, the customer presents their card, the money's collected, processed by the various entities that do the processing, and then the money winds up in the county's coffer, fully collateralized and part of the depository agreement. So when we get to the next page, you can see what my concern is. My concern in this example is it works almost exactly the same, except there we have, instead of our little county seal in the county, we have the vendor acting as the merchant. As I mentioned earlier, they step in front of us, and they have the actual dollars sitting in their bank, wherever their bank is, until they disperse that money to us. That money sitting wherever they're holding it on our behalf is not part of the depository agreement. It is not collateralized. Now, the risk could be minuscule, depending on the vendor. They could be a really large, strong financial vendor. But on the other hand, you have whatever departments you authorize to enter into this type of model, you're sending county, state, and or other entities' money to the black bank. And it's black on purpose because we don't really know where that bank is. It's not our money at that point. It's being held for us. They have a lot of really attractive things that they do for us to step in front of us. One of the main things they offer for us is we won't have any chargebacks. They take all of the chargebacks. Well, that sounds really neat, but nothing's free in this world. So if they're taking those chargebacks on our behalf, then someone's still paying for that. And so if there were ever some sort of risk that materialized, our monies are not segregated either. So my money's lumped in with any other entity that they collect for under this same model, because it's their money at that point. And so before I, as the county auditor, could say that I could support this concept, I'm not sure I could ever get to that point, quite honestly, but maybe for some of the smaller departments it makes sense. But I certainly could never support this model for large sums of cash, because I just don't think that the benefits outweigh the risk. But that's the auditor's opinion. And again, I'm paid to have an opinion, whether people always like my opinion or not. That's actually what I'm paid to do. And I don't express it unless I feel it's really necessary that you hear it. I think this is a governing body decision, though. It's not my decision, so I don't intend to step in front of whatever it is the governing body chooses to do, because if we go out for an RFP for a department or for the county as a whole, that contract will wind back in here for you to enter into that document. And I just want to make sure that if you enter into that document, you understand, to the best of my knowledge and understanding, that that money is in that black bank before it comes to our bank. It's not collateralized. It's not segregated.
Okay, so let me ask a couple of questions, I guess. I want to go back. So the chargebacks you're talking about, if I look on one page over where it says tax office chargeback activity. So you're saying that in 2015, now I'm a little out of it, we had 18 transactions that were actually kicked back for $66,796. And so that would have been situations where the credit card company was on the line for that, and we didn't have to do anything.
Under the current scenario, that comes back to the county, and there's no funds received. So the taxes are still owed, or if the person actually bought that's not what this is, but if it's been a motor vehicle, then they would still have their plates, but they would have defaulted on, and we would not have received the money. So under the current scenario, again, we do have chargebacks. They are presented to the county, and the county doesn't have that money.
I thought one of the advantages on the credit card, quite honestly, is that once they charge it, the vendor gets the money, and it becomes Visa or MasterCard or whoever's responsibility for collecting that money.
If the customer doesn't pay, then obviously it's Visa or MasterCard's issue with the customer at that point in time. But if there's something that occurs that it wasn't authorized, or there was somehow, I mean, it's unlikely today, in my opinion, that you have a lot of chargebacks in most areas, because with the electronic systems the way they work, that's one way this whole concept can work for this vendor as merchant concept, is that they have to have a way of verifying with the internet and all of the databases that exist, whether or not that card's good, the credit score for that person, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's just not a lot of instances where the cards are accepted. They're declined at the point of sale possibly, but they're not accepted so that you result into a chargeback.
Okay, but these chargebacks that you refer to for fiscal 15, 18 transactions, $66,000.
That's correct.
Somebody walked into the tax office, they charged their tax bill.
Or they did it online, but yes, somehow they attempted to pay for their taxes with a credit card.
With a credit card.
And the credit card payment was approved
Initially.
And so like if I walk into Dillard's and I pay by credit card, Dillard's checks with Visa and they say, yeah, we're gonna let you have him this time.
Mm-hmm.
So they pay Dillard's.
Not necessarily. Dillard's, there's a settlement. I mean, everything is processed and the paperwork reconciled and the money transferred typically the next day or 2 days. And so even if we had the money, they can take it back. But a lot of times, for the most part, the chargeback occurs before the money's actually transferred. And so there's a reconciliation process.
So if somebody, I'm gonna take it out of I'm standpoint now because that ain't ever happened. But if you got somebody who charges a lot on the credit card, you're telling me that Visa goes back and collects all that money from the merchants and is not subject to any loss?
No, if we go back to the chart, there's a lot on the chart as far as what's going on behind the scenes. I was answering what you were addressing, I thought, related to whether the county had the money.
Well, but see, that's what I'm saying. It seems to me like if they come in and charge it on Visa, the moment Visa approves that, then they're gonna pay us, and then if they can't collect it, it becomes their problem to collect it.
It's not just about collecting, it's about there's other issues that generate chargebacks, and I'm not knowledgeable of what all those are.
And I'm sorry, you and I have talked a little bit about this. I wanna walk down this path and make sure I understand it.
Yeah, whatever.
And so Ron and then Mary Louise,
I mean, if you walk out with your merchandise, if you're getting license plates or a birth certificate or something, and you walk out with that, and then that card does get charged back, which again happens infrequently, as you can see, but it does happen, then you already have your good or service.
and it seems, I thought that in most instances, Visa was on the hook for collecting the money, and if they couldn't, that's why they charge the 3% fee.
It is. But there are instances, very limited, again, we're talking about 18 instances here, all last year.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
So it's very, very small to where there's chargebacks, but there can still be chargebacks, and again, I don't know.
Ron, do you have any?
Here's the thing, if there's a chargeback and we have not, the money's not gone into the county treasury, then that person still owes their taxes. And if they don't pay, again, if they don't pay on time, it's gonna be delinquent like any other tax account.
Right, but I guess my question is, how long does it normally take from the time you take the credit card till it goes into our depository?
Oh, it's
2 days.
Yeah.
So something has happened, is it either somebody stole the card and it's an unauthorized charge.
That's one of the scenarios.
So give me a, I can understand that scenario. Give me another.
Someone took grandma's card out of her purse, I don't know what all the reasons are. Again, it's such a small number.
Yeah.
And so let me make something clear, though, that I think is really important. Because it is such a small number, I realize there's reconciliation and paperwork and accounting associated, and some of our vendors over the period of time, some of their reports have not been as robust as we might have liked, and it's caused more work on the bean counters, again, counting the beans to reconcile the paperwork. But in today's society, with the type of processing that we currently have, it's a very small number. When you look at $124 million in credit cards to the tax office, and you're talking about $66,000. So even to sign up with a vendor is one of the reasons we say we want to go with this vendor as a merchant concept is because they take care of all the chargebacks.
And I was just asking a question about the chargeback.
And
that's not my bigger. You're right. The bigger concern is on the slide after this one, where it talks about, so it is that vendor merchant. So what you're saying is that some companies want to,
That's
they
the
want to
model.
own the money.
That's the model that they're offering, is the vendor is the merchant. That's the way they describe it. That's what they're offering. There are departments that have expressed an interest in that concept. I understand the advantages to the department. I understand the convenience to the bean counters and the people who have to deal with that in all of the departments. But again, as the auditor, I don't think that, from my perspective, for the security of funds, I'm not questioning anybody's operational issues because I'm not there. But as the auditor, being concerned about county assets and county funds, when that money is not secured by collateral, which is required by the Public Funds Investment and the Depository Acts, and it is commingled or fungible with other entities' money, and even if it was Chase again, a company the size of Chase, I wouldn't advocate vendor as merchant for Chase, much less anyone else. It doesn't matter who it is. I'm just standing here today as the auditor saying, I think that's an unnecessary risk, and it's not one that I would be willing to support. On the other hand, for some of the smaller departments where the dollars are not that large, then maybe it's a concept that y'all could support for those offices, and you could enter into those contracts. For the tax assessor's office, I would be back up here again going, the day you were going to enter into that contract, saying, I think this is a mistake. Because you don't want to ever have to call up the cities or the school districts. Let's just say the money's delayed. Not that it's not actually lost. Let's say it gets delayed for whatever reason. There's some sort of crisis in Chicago, because Cook County is a vendor, one of the customers of one of these vendors. So let's say there's some sort of financial crisis in Cook County in Chicago, and the money's delayed. Who's going to call up and tell the school districts and the cities that their money's delayed? I don't intend for it to be me, and I don't think Mr. Riley
I can
wants
give
to
you
call
the
him.
number of Tony Perkwinkle if you'd like to call him.
I don't want to call him, that's just it. You know, I want to know that it's over in the Chase depository account, fully collateralized and fully segregated for the exclusive benefit of Tarrant County.
Mary Louise, talk to us a little bit about, I mean, your name, the county clerks, talk to us a little bit about this one.
Well, first, thank
Do
you.
we have an RFP out right now? Is that
No,
what
we don't have anything out.
Okay.
So thank you, Renee, for bringing this to the attention, and thank you, IT, for helping us try and do a collaboration. You know, we're just trying to find better vendors, and we would like to go out there and find a contract. We struggle quite a bit with our current vendor, and I understand it's not her operation, and the bean counters, the people that have to do the
Who's our
tracing the
current
charge, mine is Certified Payments. And we've been struggling for years with them, and I just am ready to look at something different. And, you know, in this particular slide, when we talked to one of the vendors that did a presentation, it was the same day. So there's two sides to every story, and I understand, you know, that she's up here giving her side, but there are two sides. So I just ask, when we do go out there and we come back with a model or we come back with a contract, I'm very judicious of financial responsibility with my name on it. I will bring something. We would have vetted it. I obviously would have gone through the district attorney and Vince to make sure we're right, but I don't feel it's fair as an elected official to do business with somebody that we fight with constantly. When somebody purchases a birth certificate, then walks out and says, I didn't buy that. And I know you think it's minimal, but it's happening and it's going to start growing. So I'm looking for something different. And I just want you to remain open-minded.
When you say they didn't buy that, what?
They are purchasing records, and then they are canceling the credit card. And then we have to go back to our vendor and say, the record's gone. And Sarah has her birth certificate, and they said, well, Sarah's mommy called and said she didn't buy it. So it delays, and that's money we lose, and those are records that are out there. And it is increasing, and I want it addressed. So I want to look and see, and I'm having challenges with my vendor, and I've had it for years.
And that's
why I'm
Certified
looking.
Payments?
Yes, and that's why I'm looking. And we've had conversations. We've had very serious issues with them in the past, and criminal with collections and warrants and things that we don't want to talk about that we've already settled. But just be open-minded. That's all I ask.
Well, and I would feel like it sounds, if we're having those kind of problems, it does sound like we need to have some sort of an RFP. My preference certainly would be.
And that's just for my office. I'm not speaking. And
Well,
I agree with her. Let everybody do their own. But I commend IT because they go out and they ask all the department heads, what is it that you're needing? And some of us are not happy with our vendors, and we wanted to look. So if we have a chance to do enterprise and say, here's what we hope to do, here's where we hope to get the percentage of payment. If it's not 3%, maybe if there's enough players, it goes to 2%. That was the purpose of IT doing this. I'm not speaking on behalf of anybody. Mr. Wilder is with certified payments. He's probably happy with them. I struggle with it, and I'm over it, and I want to start looking to see if there's anything else. That's all I'm asking for my department.
Okay. Well, I have heard a problem with basically a one solution is when we, as a county, we go out on an RFP and we select a vendor. Then the other departments, when their contract with the existing vendor are over, then they must, by law, I'm not sure if I understand this correctly, but by law, that particular department have to go with the particular vendor that have been selected via the RFP. Is
But
that
that's
an
never been
accuracy?
discussed. Even in the eGov, we had a very spirited debate, and that was never discussed. Renee immediately jumped up a year ago and said, we cannot make elected officials go on this mandatory one base. It was never something we brought up in eGov. You were there, Commissioner.
I was there, but I talked to Renee and I talked to Mr. Beecham. There are certain purchasing law that we may be obligated to comply. That's why I'm bringing this up to make sure.
Let me clarify. When I said that we can't force elected officials, I do believe that. I don't think it's appropriate for me to try to force anyone how to do their business, per se. When we go out, though, for a countywide RFP through the procurement process, then legally, we are then changing to where we are going to have to, those departments are going to have to stay with the vendor that they currently use, or they're going to have to go with whoever's selected on a countywide basis. The history that I didn't give you, and I'll give it to you in a Cliff Note version, is the first credit card company that ever was brought to the county was brought by the previous county clerk, and it was basically certified payments. When the tax assessor, the previous tax assessor, wanted to start taking credit cards, they also signed up with certified payments. At some point shortly after that, the previous tax assessor wanted to move to Chase, and so you were brought a contract to enter into with Chase for processing for the tax office. At that time, I actually raised the question to the tax assessor, was there a possibility that we could look at something that everyone might benefit from? And that was the beginning of the end, if not already, my relationship with that tax assessor collector, because they did not want to slow down their process. They wanted to move forward with Chase. Chase is still the vendor for the tax office. We have a third vendor, Global, which was listed on the slide, that does some of the other smaller departments. We've never had one vendor, and part of that, again, is that, again, the offices are very diversified. Even the county clerk's collections are minuscule in relation to the money that goes through the tax office. And so no matter how many birth certificates we sell, we're only looking at $6, $7, $8 million. And again, in the tax office, yes, credit cards will continue to increase in the tax office, and we'll go from $124 million to who knows what that number will become. And all I'm saying is if we're increasing the risk, if we're putting someone in front of us and our money and everyone else's money, then I think it warrants long, hard consideration by this governing body on whether or not that is a prudent decision. I'm not asking for your decision today. My purpose today was to make sure that you understood what my concerns were and to open dialogue about this. And so with that, I'll leave it with you. This will have to come back up, though, from the standpoint, again, that the county clerk wants to move forward, and then there's the whole issue of whether or not the other departments and or the county as a whole wants to move forward. So, credit cards are a way of life.
So let me ask a question with regards to our ability, or anyone's ability to enter into a contract for something like this. And it's kind of directed toward our legal eagles over here. I know that if it's going to be over a certain amount, we have to do an RFP for it. Or we buy off an existing RFP that has already gone through the process, either at a state level, a local level. Somebody has done an RFP, has complied with the law, and therefore we can piggyback. We have hundreds of folks that piggyback off of our contracts. If there's 4 of these contracts, 1 that we do an RFP for and select, and 3 that have gone through the process and have been approved by other entities. Does that give elected officials within any jurisdiction the ability to use anyone as long as the contract they're using has gone through a formal legal process and been approved?
Yeah, if they've gone through the vetting process and have been approved, then we could piggyback on it, so that.
Even if we as the county have said for our county, this is the one we're going to approve through our RFP process, as long as another vendor has been approved through some other, now I've got them both thinking because they're both looking down and kind of, So if they've been approved through another fully deal, can somebody buy off either one of them?
Your Honor, I think the one thing that we need to be aware of is that the county is not spending any money here. So the issue of going out to $50,000 is not applicable.
Right. Because it's pass through, everything's a pass through. And when
We're not spending any county monies.
It's not a 262 issue,
No, it's
so
not.
we're not actually exchanging anything.
And the issue, again, when you did this in the years past, was the contracts were simply brought to Commissioner's Court and approved, because we have, I think, pretty well clarified that only the Commissioner's Court can enter into the contract, no matter who it is that the elected official wants to choose to provide that service for them. This governing body still has to enter into that contract. And quite honestly, in y'all's defense, I think many times things come here without you fully understanding these types of things in this example, and that's my concern when I got passionate a few weeks ago. EGov, is this thing had taken on a life on its own and was moving forward, and this wasn't being discussed, and then the first thing I knew, I felt like this contract's going to wind up here on your doorstep. I'm going to raise my hand and be a problem. Either that, or y'all are going to approve it, not really maybe understanding this. Not that anyone's doing anything wrong, it's just the process and the way it works.
As y'all go about, I'll just kind of make it as a general statement, at least from my perspective, as y'all go about looking at these various vendors, whoever y'all is and whoever the vendors are, it does trouble me if that county emblem is not in there, and that if the money ever appears to be in the name of or totally under the control of
a vendor
or of a vendor bank without it going through our depository, that gives me a little bit of heartburn, just for the reason that we've said. And I'd have to look at it I can't imagine me not having a problem regardless of the size. But if we're talking about the law library and we're talking about $7,600, and there could be real justification for that, I might consider that. But certainly when you start talking about 124 million, it's a little bit more of a stretch.
All right. Well, thank you, that's all I have today.
So Jack, on the bid process, how are we proceeding forward to make, to give these folks the flexibility? My preference would be one vendor that does everything. But there are differences, and there may be enough differences in what they offer and what they do for us. And I'm going to say also from the county clerk's standpoint, she, as well as some of her predecessors, have been very agreeable to work with us through their technology fund and through their other funds to help us through processes, and I appreciate that, and just want to be able to give them, if these people are saying King's X, we're not going to pay you because somebody got a record and now they want to claim they didn't pay they don't need to pay for it, that's a problem.
Obviously, it's a complicated issue. I can't stand here and believe that it's going to be a one-size-fits-all for everybody in the county. I understand that. I would go back to 20 years worth of all of us working together, all the departments, and I think we can make this work in Tarrant County. I truly believe that. I think you could do a multifaceted RFP, and there may be more than one vendor with different circumstances for those specific requirements. I think you could do that. But I think we need to test the waters and put something out and see what we receive from the RFP process.
Well,
But
there are
I-
certain conditions that I would consider to be immutable, and those are the two that Renee has mentioned. I would like to see all funds collateralized, and I would like
agree.
to see them segregated. Now, there may be several different vendors that can offer several different programs that include those two conditions. If so, I'm all for that. But there are certain things that are kind of rock bottom, gotta have conditions. And to me, those two fit that bill.
Well, you know, this comes up, I had this conversation, unfortunately, more often than I'd like to. When we bring a recommendation to Commissioner Court, it's just that, it's a recommendation. And if we have a vendor or a group of vendors approved by the court, that's who we're gonna use. Y'all have given us our marching papers. And I have to remind departments too frequently that we're gonna use vendors that you have told us that we are going to award to every Tuesday. So if, I can tell you that some of these companies, this has morphed into a pretty large-sized project over the last 20 years. We didn't always have companies doing what they're doing for us now in credit card processing. Different people did different things. They were, I could a pilot program, to me, always turns into a co-pilot program. Because then everybody else has one over the county. It morphs into what it is. So I still say that, I agree with what Renee says. I respect the elected officials' concerns, but I think that I still believe we should put something on the street and test the waters with those hard requirements that you spoke of, and see what we get in return.
Can we select more than one vendors to give elected officials certain degree of flexibility? Is that possible? Because
Yes,
what
sir.
I have been hearing is that the needs of various departments are not all the same. Okay, so if we select one vendor, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
It may be a 1, 2, 3 category type RFP where there are different requirements for various size departments, and I think we could do that. I think that could be accomplished.
I just want to say this, court members, we have been in discussion at the eGov subcommittee level, and yes, the discussions have been quite passionate, to say the least. So I think this issue needs direction from the court in order to move it to an acceptable level of solution. So.
May I ask or add something, Jack? Now, maybe we're looking at this in an RFP fashion, and in reality, what we're saying is that we want a vendor that meets certain qualifications. Okay, because an RFP basically talks about some type of competitive bid. And this is really not what that is. May I suggest we pull this down, look at the possibility.
We don't have anything up.
Well, in just a second, Judge. And let's go to an RFQ, which is a request for qualifications. That way you can have a list of vendors, you understand their qualifications and their limitations, and then you can either choose 1 or 2 or 3 of those, or at least you can use that as a guideline whenever it's presented to you to approve a contract. Because while you may not have the authority to tell an elected official which vendor to use, what you do have, you have the ability, the sole ability, to approve that contract. And if there's not an existing contract, well, then that vendor can't do business with us. So I would suggest we pull this down, look at the possibility of going with an RFQ type process. Let's get these vendors qualified. Then bring them back to the court so that you all can see those qualifications. Use that as a guideline whenever anyone, any department comes before you and asks for a credit card account.
That sounds reasonable.
Yes.
So y'all been talking about this for a long time. If we can,
It's been going back and forth.
if y'all can move this forward and it not be something we're talking about a year from now.
Okay.
Do you need a motion for that, or?
No, I think we just need to
No,
go.
yeah, that's, I think that may be.
I'm in agreement with your
We wanna get
suggestion.
legal also to make sure that we touch all the bases, and obviously with audit, but I really, just thinking about it, maybe an RFQ is the way to solve this issue.
Yeah, because there is, I mean, I realize we're not talking about any expenditure, but there are, from time to time, companies will come and say, well, we can do this and it will save you a lot of money and we'll just get paid out of the savings, or we think we can bring revenue to the county. And while we may not be required, if we're not required to put that in the form of a contract that has to be approved by somebody, then we should be. Because if we're looking at, well, you know, golly, this company
If
can.
those are stipulations that they intend to offer to the county, then they need to be embedded in that contract. You need to have that in that contract. Because if you don't, it's gonna be real messy. What happens if they don't? What's your?
Well, and also, I think we do a great job of getting along with everybody here, and, you know, and part of that is respecting the other elected officials. And so, to some extent, you know, I'd still like to know that if there's a contract that's been approved, what does that, or how, if at all, does that impact a contract or an RFQ or an RFP that we have approved in the county as a court itself? But thank you, Commissioner Wynn, and if y'all can kind of on your e-governing committee, good luck.
Your Honor, members of the court, we have one additional item to bring to you in briefing. This is the federal legislative update. Mr. Pikes is here to address the court at this time.
We were humming right along until this last deal.
That's all right. I'll be short and sweet. Good morning, everybody. Members of the court, it's a delight to be back with you. As you know, every couple of months, I like to come to bring news from Washington. Today, I get the pleasure of bringing great news from Washington, which is the news of our extension of the 1115 waiver. I want to thank everybody on the court for your help. We've been working on this now pretty intensively for about 10 months, and a number of you have made trips and helped us with our meetings, and we can't thank you enough. We also want to thank our partners at HHSC, THA, and other medical groups that push for this. Let me walk you through briefly what CMS has agreed to, and then kind of the next steps going forward. If you look at this slide here, it talks about some of the work that we did together with all of you, about 210 meetings or touches on the Hill, conversations with members or staff, trying to build as much support among our congressional delegation as possible to put a little bit of pressure on CMS, let them know Congress was watching. This was a big deal on a bipartisan basis to the Texas delegation, and we think we did that very well with your help. Mr. Manias came up as well. We're very grateful for all of that. Worked with our allies, as I mentioned, THA and HHSC. We're able to get a bipartisan letter sent in November from 37 of the 38 Texas members, as well as phone calls that went from members to CMS urging them to take a serious look at this. As you know, if I can go to the next one here, from my email that I sent to all of you last Monday, CMS and HHSC reached an agreement on a 15-month, what we'll call a short-term extension, which is something that we had asked for as well. We realized that getting the full extension seemed unlikely, and so at HHSC's direction, we began working a few months ago on a short-term extension. This is 15 months. It will run from October 1, 2016 through December 31st, 2017. All of the current conditions of the waiver maintain the same. This gives the state time to do the study. You'll remember we talked about the study that CMS had asked for last time I was here. That study is beginning now and will be completed this summer. And the big issues there will be basically showing CMS that continuing the uncompensated pool number is the best way to reach the uninsured as opposed to Medicaid expansion, and also showing that the provider payment rates that the state sets are such that providers will continue to participate in the programs. We feel like we can make arguments on both these issues, and we're cautiously optimistic. But that work will begin actually tomorrow with Judge Whitley going to Washington to begin to thank our partners on the Hill for all they did to help us get the extension, and then to ask them to work with us again as we work on a long-term extension with CMS during this next year and a half. So huge win for the county, huge win for public health, huge win for JPS. Cannot thank all of you enough for your support and your help on this. We realize there are many, many issues important to the county that are on our agenda, and we deliberately prioritize this one because it means so much to the county in terms of dollars and cents. We haven't forgotten about the other priorities. We're going to pick those up here in the next few months as well. But we're also going to keep an eye on this long-term extension because this is the next big phase of this fight, and we're going to need your help now more than ever and be bringing you back up to Washington again. So with that, again, let me say thank you and stop and take any questions you may have.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thanks, Casey.
Thanks, Casey.
Your Honor, that's all we have at this time.
And we will now recess our open meeting and proceed to close to discuss items exempted under section 551.071, 072, 074, 076, and 087 of the Texas Government Code. Having returned from our closed proceedings and there being no business except for our work session to go forward with, we'll go forward with our work session.
That meeting's adjourned, though.
No, we can't adjourn. He got real nervous when he thought when I even looked like I was going to adjourn anything.
We're out of here if you do.
All right, take it away.
Very good. If we can now go to the work session, and I'm going to introduce Ms. Pelly, and you're going to address the court at this time.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Tracy.
Good afternoon. Staff is requesting that Commissioners Court hear presentations from and start evaluations of 3 architectural engineering firms that are interested in the 2006 capital improvement program for the Juvenile Center project. The scope of the work, as we know it today, provides for a 35 to 50,000 square foot single level LEED building to be constructed on the east portion of the campus. The purpose of the new building is to relocate 4 courtrooms and support staff to this new building. It also includes 1 or 2 new detention pods, similar to the octagonal pods constructed in 1998. It also includes expansion of the kitchen and dining area, new maintenance building, secured staff parking, and general overall site improvements. The project may also include renovation of the existing office areas, replacement of the HVAC rooftop equipment, and addition of masonry veneer over existing tilt wall exterior facade. The detention areas constructed in the 1970s and 1980s will be demolished as part of this project. A total of 10 architectural engineering submittals were received for the project, which were narrowed down to 5 for interviews by the evaluation committee. Of those five, the top-ranking 3 firms were selected for the relevant experience in justice and juvenile design. Presentations will be given in alphabetical order, the first being Brinkley Sargent Wigington Architects, then Dewberry Architects, followed by HDR Architecture. Each firm has been asked to limit their presentations to 20 minutes with 10 minutes for Q&A. We will take a short break between each firm so they can set up. Scorecards have been provided to each of you in the submittal package. Does everyone have their scorecards? Does anybody need any?
Is our scorecard?
Yes.
Does everyone have theirs?
It's in the middle of that paperwork that was in front of the presentations, which you don't have right in front of you.
In here?
Do you have your own, do you have your?
I don't have it. Thank you.
Okay, that we ask that the firms be ranked 1 through 3, with 1 being the highest ranked firm. And then we plan to be back next week to ask permission to negotiate with the highest ranked firm. Are there any questions before we begin?
Nope. Start after.
Okay, then I'd like to introduce our first presenters. We have Jim Wigington, Carl Komatsu, Laura Maiello, and Brian Richards with Brinkley Sargent Wigington.
Tracy, to look at the slide.
Good, Dan.
Naomi's going to work, so she's going to be up here.
It works. Yep, this down.
And I might ask that as you address the board, we are recording this, so if you will speak loudly and into the mic for everyone to hear you.
And I saw there were some intel.
GK, is there any way that the board, and you may be fine, but if you're gonna just be basically operating the slide presentation, other people are gonna talk, is there any way she could sit someplace other than?
That'd be great.
If
Yeah,
don't
you can
mind,
just take
sit-
that and
you can
move
sit
it.
next to me.
That'd be great, yeah.
I'm sorry, I really didn't realize that was gonna be the end result, but that'll be all right.
No, that makes the most sense. I'm just standing here.
I was gonna tell you thank you, Your Honor.
Whatever y'all want me to do. I'm happy to sit right here. Thank you.
Thank you, that's very
Thank you.
helpful. All right, ready?
Go for it.
Well, first of all, thank you so very much for allowing us to meet with you. It's a very important project, and we recognize it's important. It's about the kids. Back at our office, we often talk about, we're grateful that our career paths took us to where we get to work on projects and make a big difference in communities, as opposed to doing a 7-Eleven or Motel 6 or something. I'm sure that's honorable work, but it's nice to be able to do things that make a difference in a community, so.
Now, he's fixing to tell you, you need to get up there in that microphone so that.
Oh, okay, thank you, sorry. So,
Why don't you step in front?
so we are excited about the opportunity. And Dana, go ahead. And Laura, go ahead and say.
Sure.
We're gonna, just wanted to say that we recognize this is about the kids. And we're grateful we get to give the staff some tools to work with these kids while hopefully they can still be reached and go on to have a good life, so.
And I think that's a very important message. You know, Tracy described in great detail what the scope of the project is, and that's the what. But the why is really what's on this screen. Because as Tarrant County recognizes, sustainable communities are really based on healthy kids. And you've done that with your advocacy program that I read about. That's recently reduced commitments to Texas JJD by 48% just in 1 year. So it's encouraging for me, and what excites me is to work with a county that really recognizes the value. And we know that kids that are touched by the juvenile justice system, the research is showing us that they come in with what's called a trauma histories. What that means is in their short lives, they've either been victims of or exposed to violence, to abuse, to abandonment. They've lost faith in authority figures. And so the business of the courts and the business of detention and probation is just so important to the sustainability of the youth in Travis County. And so our project is about helping you to build the buildings that are the tools to meet that mission.
Terry County. You have these in front of you. Just to tell you quickly about the team. Laura, I've worked with her firm in the past, is a national consultant on juvenile facilities. She does them all over the country. And you may be familiar with me and Carl Komatsu. Of course, Carl's a local architect. We had the pleasure, Brian and I did, working with y'all on the Lon Evans Corrections Facility that was done here a couple years ago. Of course, y'all know Brian, local engineer. And so you get, you can see that we really have extensive knowledge. Now, this is just the juvenile stuff, but courts and detention of all kinds. And you can see the numbers, 100 and 200 and all of that. But a lot of experience that I believe you would find relevant. And on the back is some pictures, just some representative photographs of work that the team has done.
And I think that's what begins to really excite people, even at this point in the process, is the built building. Everyone wants to get to the peach box design. And our team is anxious to design with you as well. We've designed many courts and juvenile facilities. But our approach to a project of this significance and with very specific mission buildings is to start from the left and go to the right, that operations drives design. And so we'll be working with you to really think about your operations and to ensure that your facilities are responsive to what it is that you need to do in each of them. So the approach there is data driven to some extent. So my role with the Juvenile Commission and with Juvenile Services and with county advocates is to really begin to look at the data that states what is the need. How many beds are required? How big is the courthouse? 4 courtrooms, but we're learning that juvenile courts need lots of other space as well. And to look at staffing that says, how does that impact on the number of office spaces and the kind of space that's required? And not only how many beds, but who? Juvenile detention population is varied in terms of risk, in terms of gender, in terms of age. Now that's the numbers, but what's really important here is that we will be working with juvenile services throughout so that their input is part of this process. It's not just number crunching. That translates in terms of the next step into, well, what are the space requirements? How big will these buildings be? Will the court be 35,000 or 50,000 square feet? Do you need 24 new detention beds or only 16? And why that's important to commissioners is because this process and this rigor of going through all of the vetting out and the data and the empirical analyses and understanding your operations means that when you're ready to design, no surprises. It all will have been covered. You won't find a headline that says, detention facility is short by X number of beds because raise the age legislation, for example, wasn't considered. So it's very important to ensure that we've got a defendable program that goes forward before the design begins. And so you may be seeing some designs today. I'm sure you might be, you will be. But our approach is not yet. Let's plan this facility so that it meets the needs of Tarrant County. This is Travis County. And if I mentioned it, I apologize, but I've been spending a lot of time there. And I just wanted to spend a moment on it to just let you know and give you confidence that, yes, as a national specialist, and I go all over the country, I've been spending a lot of time in Texas. And the issues that we're dealing with the Travis County Juvenile Probation Department on their Gardner Betts campus mirror your project. And so I understand not only national issues to bring to the table, but what's going on in Texas. If legislation passes to raise the age and include the 17-year-olds in your system, that's going to mean more court cases. That may mean more detention beds. I also understand that the interconnectivity between what happens in detention and what happens in juvenile court and the requirement for probation to be very involved through every point in that process in assessing youth really requires that these departments have some interconnectivity physically so that perhaps the detention hearing room is in proximity to the detention housing units so that we can minimize the amount of travel across facility. So as we get into this a little bit later, that's some of what we'll be looking at when we begin to take a closer look at your site and come up with some solutions. I've also recognized from working with Travis County and across the country that juvenile justice has changed, that the kids that are coming into the system, because many are on alternatives, the kids coming into detention are a lot more challenging. They've got substance abuse issues, they've got mental health issues, they've got some anger issues. And so separation of youth to ensure safety and security is paramount. And when we describe and define with juvenile services what the detention component is, it's not just how many beds do you need, it's what are those beds and what's the appropriate size of the unit. We also know as the locus of juvenile justice, juvenile services needs the space to embrace the community, to embrace the agencies that are part and parcel of the work that is done with juveniles. The door has to swing both ways and the spaces need to be available. So the point being that part of this process, before you design, you must define, is to understand your operations, Tarrant County operations, not to overlay Travis or any other counties, but to understand yours and to ensure that the facilities that are designed to meet your goals, your objectives, your values here in Tarrant County.
Try this. So, GK mentioned the site, your existing campus, some of the demolition scope on the left, some opportunities on the right, and then the far right, your easternmost property. And we look at this as some overarching opportunities. We know that as a new courts facility, that can be a new front door that establishes visiting families, establishes their first blush impression of the facility. We know that your program has accommodated the potential of upgrading the aesthetic environment for the families and the youth that are detained here. But there are some large strokes, sense of arrival, the drive up to the facility could be enhanced so that right away you understand that you're on a Tarrant County facility, but it's much different from what it is now. Going to the courts facility that will greet 90% of the public participants in the justice process, and still have the opportunity then to cost effectively, but from an environmental and deinstitutionalization process, affect the other parts of the campus. So as Laura mentioned, instead of coming with preconceptions, we're really targeting listening to you and your staff first so that we don't create some inappropriate preconceptions and can move forward with a program that works, that fits in your budget. Brian, whose firm has been involved with your justice detention centers probably for the last 10 or 12 years, brings some excellent existing knowledge of the campus.
Yeah, I've worked on this campus on and off for probably 10 years, doing assessments, looking at county performed construction work as an inspector. Anyway, I know quite a bit about it, and knowing the county's desire for energy efficiency, LEED buildings, which this is going to be, I can tell you this facility is right for an improvement to its energy use. It is quite outdated. There's a lot we can do to improve that, both on the lighting side, air conditioning side, so we will make sure that that is done and that it gets to the Tarrant County standard for energy efficiency.
Something that, if you can look at the slide, something that's critical in any public project is the budget. And almost, well, all the work we do is public funded work. So we're used to that, and I think we're good at it. I just wanted to make the point that controlling the budget on a project, cost control, it's not getting to a phase and then getting a cost estimate. That's a snapshot. You have to make cost decisions all the way through a project. And it begins with how big, how many courtrooms, all of those kinds of things. You're actually establishing the budget as you're doing that. Now, we probably are going to have options, and so there's some different things that can be done to let the court consider different values. And the other thing, the little diagram, if you look at the arrows, is that was just our way of saying we've discovered over the years that there's things that you need in a project, and then there's things that you might want. And it's not that wants aren't important, but they're not needs. So we have to hit the needs. We have to get what has to be done. And then if there's money available, we can quantify and we can price the other options. And even those are probably prioritized. I would imagine that maybe y'all and the staff have things that are more important than others. So you can prioritize that. But that is a project-along activity, and that's controlling the cost.
This is a picture of your new Lawn Evans jail, and talking about LEED and your commitment to energy efficiency. This was the first LEED gold jail actually in the country. It was the second LEED certified jail in the entire United States. One in California beat us by a month, and it was only certified. This may still be the only LEED gold jail in the country. And we were able to take what jail standards requires to open a jail, some traditional LEED methodologies for saving energy, and we were able to mold it and beat it to fit, and came out with a building that typically uses more energy than most, and got it down to a reasonable amount, and got a LEED certified building. So you should be very proud of that.
And we worked together on that, the teams.
And Jim and our firm recently did the $104 million City of Fort Worth Fire and Police Training Facility. So it's not a brand new team thrown at you.
Do you want to say anything about these?
If I have a moment, 30 seconds. Yeah, because I wanted to just address this slide for two reasons. These are two juvenile facilities. One is under construction, one is in construction documents that are going to be certified LEED silver. And so it's doable. There's some challenges, but it's doable. And here's just some examples of things that were discussed with the client to try to get to, those point levels. The other thing I wanted to discuss with having it on the slide is that, being a national juvenile justice consultant adds value to the team, but I'm not a sole proprietor. I have depth of team behind me, a firm of architects and planners who do nothing but juvenile and adult correctional facility and courts. So what I know is also tested in the built building by my own peers.
Kind of lastly, I want to show you some pictures of projects. The fact is, the firm, eventually all the analysis, needs assessment, study, and all of that ends up becoming buildings. And you'll see that these pictures show different types of courtrooms and different kinds of detention space. Here's one that multi-purpose was a desire. The one before it obviously was a very nice court facility, and then this one right here that's coming up is a very simple, this was in Smith County Juvenile Center. So again, design reacts to what the client needs, and there's different types of spaces. So you'll see a difference in these, but I also wanted to tell you that even though I'm not a national juvenile expert, I have worked on 14 or 15 juvenile centers, mostly in Texas. And so we are very familiar. We just renovated a juvenile center in Roswell, New Mexico. So we do have a lot of experience in that. It's just that Laura brings really a national perspective that's very helpful. And as you've heard, a lot of expertise on that mining the data and getting information. Here's some juvenile day rooms. And bringing all of that to the table to set what is the project, working with your staff and with y'all. And then Brian and Carl and I, even though I'll be involved in that, Carl will be involved to some degree, then we will actually, survey the buildings and produce the documents. And so just in closing, I wanted to say that, why select us? Why? You're talking to 3 good firms. I do want to point out that the other 2 are large national firms, so one could consider them carpetbaggers. We're Texas boys, and for whatever that's worth. But we have done, I mean, literally hundreds of these types of projects all over the state and in the Southwest. So we do have a lot of relevant experience. Of course, we've worked with Tarrant County. These gentlemen have worked with Tarrant County for many, many years. And and I think Brian has done, if not all, most of the jail work y'all have done in quite some time. But again, it comes back to the kids and the staff, and we know it's important to y'all to be on time and in budget, and I want to assure you that working with public projects for 40 years, we're good at that, and so I think you'd be wonderfully pleased with how we listen and cooperate and are part of the team. So thank you all so very much for the opportunity, and we're ready to answer any questions that you might have.
I've got at least a couple.
Yes, sir.
I agree with you that these facilities should be about the children. They should be child-centered. Laura, my ears perked up when you started talking about the impacts of early childhood trauma and adverse childhood experiences on criminogenic behavior in children. I wonder how that insight that you possess will be reflected in the design of this facility.
That's a great question. One of the things that the research shows in terms of kids with trauma histories, and many who come through the juvenile courts and in detention have experienced them, is the way in which they react to their environment. And so much of it, I will say, is programmatic and the importance of the interaction and the programs with staff. But the physical space can be designed in a way that, first and foremost, yes, is safe, yes, is secure, but that is less intimidating without, jeopardizing the decorum of the juvenile court. But the space is less intimidating so that the juvenile doesn't feel as threatened as he might be. That in the detention pods, that smaller units that have less of a sense of large adult correctional scale, that again can be intimidating. And typically with these kids, if they're intimidated or feel threatened, the reaction is to lash out. And so we try to minimize the opportunities for that. Environment cues behavior. And so a housing unit that is safe for staff, safe for kids, and certainly secure through finishing, through color, through sunlight, through views to the outside, can lift these kids' spirits to make them feel less threatened. And once you get past not feeling safe, then you can begin to concentrate on positive behavioral change.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you summarize your understanding of the scope of this project?
Is there a mouse? We have a slide addressing that.
We actually have a slide, but as I recall, the priorities started with the court's support space and all of that. And then some amount of holding. We know nothing about your average daily population and those kinds of things right now. We know that you have a very old unit that was kind of in the northwest corner of the existing facility that you're looking at demoing and then building some more housing. And so how does all that fit together? That's part of the challenge there. But we know the kitchen needs some work. The site needs some work. There's maintenance buildings. So there's a number of things. And then the RFQ even talked about, they kind of divided into the it shall include this, but it might include this. There was even some additional stuff looking at office space, maybe the probation space, things like that, that apparently are maybe in the, would like to do this, but we don't have to do it depending on budget. So, and for us, it's, you know, it's about a close working relationship with the staff and learning and understanding what's important to y'all. What are your goals? What do we need to try to achieve for you? Yeah, we have a good understanding of juvenile facilities, but again, just like Laura said, you know, we're not here to try to say, oh, well, she's got this Travis County or I've got Collin County or something. Oh, no, we need to find out your site's different. Already your site will start driving some of the things. So it looks like you want to kind of look at the whole thing and attack these major usage courts and detention maybe is the highest priority, but then look at some other stuff that maybe could fit in the budget.
My understanding, y'all have met with a panel of stakeholders, including Judge Timinagos sitting back there.
No,
and
sir.
during that process.
Well, we were interviewed, yes, sir.
Right?
Right.
You were interviewed, exactly.
Yes, sir.
And have, Laura, with you being the specialist of Justice Center, do you understand the scope of this project? At least can you verbalize your understanding of the scope of this project?
Yeah, in my view, the scope of the project is in its simplest form. It's the list of items that Tracy mentioned that need to be addressed. Some of them are new facilities, some of them are renovation, perhaps the office space is renovation. But I also believe that it is looking at the campus as a whole, not just looking at 3 or 4 individual buildings, to ensure that we're creating a campus for you and with you that supports the interconnectivity, that provides for efficiencies of operations between the 3 elements, probation, courts, and detention. So it is design work, but again, these projects are so operationally driven that the buildings themselves and the campus as a whole, the planning that occurs before design has to ensure that we're creating the best and the most operational integrity for the juvenile services to do their business.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just one. Carl, aren't you certified as a hub business?
Yes, sir.
That is not reflected.
Well, I thought there was a earlier slide where, together with our participation.
I'm just looking at the spreadsheet here that says yes and no to hub, and it says no next to your collaboration.
66% of our team is comprised of MWBE hub firms, including Komatsu.
That's good to know.
I was born that way, so not much.
All right, thank you all very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your help. And David.
Yes.
Appreciate your help.
You bet. Last time I saw Carl, he was handing out dove decoys at a conference.
So we'll take a short break and let the other firm come in and
Rotate the
sit
next
up.
firm in. Good afternoon. My name is Charlie Goodman, and I'll be your project manager and main point of contact for the new Tarrant County Juvenile Justice Center. I'm with Dewberry Architects here in the Metroplex, and we very much appreciate the time that you're allowing us to make this brief presentation today. In the handout we've given you, we have today's agenda on one side, and then the organization that's going to serve you on the other. We'll also speak to the banners that are off to your right, banners of financial responsibility, a safe and healthy quality of life, and integration of people and places. And these phrases might be familiar to you. These are from the Commissioner's Court website, the Justice Services website, and then also the Facilities Management website. So we think we'll be listening to you. These are some of the things that you are concerned with. We are committed to Tarrant County. This project is extremely important to us, not only locally, but also nationally. And because of that interest, because it's so important to us, Mr. Jim Drawhine, the president of Dewberry, is with us today. Jim?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm Jim Drawhine. I am the president of Dewberry. And Dewberry is a family-owned company, been in business for 60 years and 1 month. So we just celebrated our 60th anniversary. Our founder, Mr. Sid Dewberry, still comes to work 4 days a week. And if you want to do the math, you could figure out he loves it. He's a great guy. We are firmly committed to this project, and our firm's philosophy is that of a community-based practice. So Dewberry has 50 offices around the United States, and we emphasize serving those communities in which we live and work. We've been in the Metroplex for 35 years, so we're committed to this project. It's very important to us, and we have a Design Excellence Center here in the Metroplex for exactly this project type, so we are very excited to be here. Our justice market is actually our largest market in our practice. We specialize in it. It is our core piece of what we do. And as a result, we're in the top 4 largest justice firms in the United States. And so we bring that expertise both nationally into our local practices as well. And with that, we also have put the very best people on this project team. This is our A team. These folks here are the best. There's no bait and switch. They will be here from the beginning to the ribbon cutting. And that's very critical. So my role here is to commit to you that we will commit the resources and the personnel that we've assigned to this team from start to finish, and they will have whatever resources they need to get from me to get this job done with a high level of quality and delivery. Quality is very important to Dewberry. A lot of firms talk about quality. We were very fortunate last month. Our insurance underwriter, which is Lloyd's of London, just sent us a $750,000 rebate and lowered our premiums on our professional liability insurance because of our quality processes. We're better than industry average, and we're successful. That also will go for our Tarrant County partners here on the team as well. So with that, we put Charlie Goodman in charge of this project. He is our senior project manager. He and I communicate regularly. He is our most seasoned and experienced leader for this project. With that, I turn it back to Charlie.
Thank you, Jim. As a retired lieutenant colonel from the U.S. Army Reserve after nearly 33 years, I understand good organization. Throughout my military career, I have also was practicing architecture mainly in the justice field. So I've been doing jails, courts, prisons, juvenile facilities for over 30 years now. I believe that we have assembled a streamlined group of professionals that will develop this project into the type of facility that serves the troubled youth of this community in a safe and healthy environment. As I mentioned previously, I will be the primary point of contact for you from the beginning of the design until the contractor hands you the keys at the end. All of my contact information is on the handout that we gave you, and feel free to contact me at any time. My cell phone is on 24 hours a day. Also from Dewberry, Rick Davidson will be your planner and architectural designer for the project. And Tim Smith, he is our internal security specialist.
and he will take care of addressing all of the physical and electronic security needs of the project. Adam Namati is here, and he will also be speaking. Adam is with MEP Consulting Engineers, and he will be discussing the healthy environment that you can have and the sustainability that we can achieve in your new facility. This is a complex project that requires careful attention to very small details in an operating justice facility, juvenile justice facility. It requires an architect that knows all the nuances of this building type. Being a complex project, we wanted to keep the structure simple. So therefore, Dewberry will be doing the architecture for this project. We have teamed up with Tarrant County engineering firms that we've worked with before and who've performed in and for Tarrant County. The three primary firms represented here today are Pacheco Koch, who will be our civil and landscape designers. JQ Infrastructure will be doing our structural design. And of course, MEP Consulting Engineers will be doing our mechanical, electrical, plumbing designs. Each of these firms has a local office, and each is a certified minority business enterprise. Financial responsibility. It's likely one of high on your priority list. It is to us. From our purview, we will help you with that priority by controlling the project from start to finish in several ways. We'll work with your chosen CM at risk in the development of cost modeling at every stage of the production of the drawings, SD, DD, and CDs. We'll use our knowledge of the most cost-effective and sustainable materials for use in a 24/7 facility such as the one that you're embarking upon. We'll use highly regimented quality control and quality assurance tactics and BIM modeling and clash detection for our drawings. Good communication and transparency. When I was a company commander, I would have to be very, very precise in the delivery of my instructions to my men. You just cannot assume that something is going to get done. You have to make sure that it is, well, what we used to say is that don't expect what you don't inspect. So I will be making sure that the communication between us is foolproof and transparent. We'll be using a web-based system of record keeping so that you can watch this process unfold throughout the course of the design. For service, we pride ourselves in being just good old-fashioned professional service provider to you. We want this experience to be as smooth and as trouble-free as possible for you and your staff. I've worked with Tim and Rick for many years now. Me as the project manager, Rick as the designer, Tim as the security designer. We have a great track record of successful projects that go back to the 1990s. With our local presence, us, will bring you the same success to this project. Tim?
Thank you, Charlie. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Good afternoon, Judge.
Good afternoon.
I think we can all agree that security is arguably one of the most, if not the most, critical systems in a facility like this, whether we're talking about the court side or the correction side, the detention side. We have a client that undertook a similar project a couple of years ago. Large renovation addition, very complex project, big price tag, $48 million. Part of that project was to replace the existing controls, which is something that we talked about last week, 2 weeks ago when we were on the walkthrough. This particular facility had a terrible challenge with staffing. They were on a good day about 65%. So you can imagine trying to manage a facility with that kind of staffing level, let alone trying to carry out a huge construction project in the midst of it. Well, we came up with a solution that allowed us to replace that control system with zero downtime. We built up the new system, we took everything off the old, moved it to the new, took the old one down, decommissioned it. Very successful project, very happy client. And I tell you that story to tell you that even with those kind of challenges, we were able to help them achieve their goals. So what does that mean for you? That means whatever kind of challenges that we're going to face with Tarrant County, with this project, we're going to help you do the same thing. We're going to work through those challenges. Chances are we've seen those things before, and we've worked through those challenges. So just like we help them solve their issues and get through their project successfully, we're going to do the same thing with you, because that's what we do. We bring that experience. We've done it. Charlie?
I'm Adam Namadi with MEP Consulting Engineers.
Adam, come on forward a little bit. Let me get you on the camera.
Okay. And speak directly into your mic. Okay. Well, thank you for having us here today. I've been a Tarrant County resident my entire life, and I currently am as well, and our company is a Fort Worth office, and we're very pleased to have we're currently working with the county. In fact, I've got a letter of recommendation here that I can leave if anybody's interested for one of our recent projects in which we were commended for our great work and our professional experience that the county had with working with us on that project. We have a lot of experience in these type of facilities. We held a 5-year IDIQ contract. It was a multi-state contract with Federal Bureau of Prisons. We also held a 3-year contract with the Texas Youth Commission. Those projects, we got to go in and see very many similar projects as this. And the most important of that was we learned how to expand an existing operation and an existing facility. And dealing with a youth detention facility, we felt like that's very important to us. So that contract was very successful for us. In regards to sustainability, we feel like we're one of the leaders in engineering for sustainability in this area. We most recently designed a 100% off-grid, 100% solar-powered facility for City of Fort Worth that's going to be installed in the North Fort Worth Service Center. We also designed the first 2 sustainable schools for Fort Worth ISD. They were high-performance schools. And currently we're working on a municipal building, 50,000 square feet, that's going to be local and LEED Platinum certified. So we understand how to be as sustainable as your program wants us to be, but we also want to balance sustainability with maintenance, especially understanding that this is a detention secure facility and that future maintenance of equipment is going to be critical in how it's accessed, as well as making sure that the total cost of ownership is incorporated. So we want to bring that balance and that mix to the team and work with everyone to make the best decisions on sustainable features. Thank you. Leave this with you in case anybody wants to see that. Okay.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Rick Davidson. I'm very pleased to be in front of you today. This is very exciting for me. I had the great privilege of several years ago, seems like yesterday, but several years ago, of working on the Family Law Center as the courts planner and programmer for that. And this is an opportunity to serve Tarrant County, and I'm very excited about that. My role, as Charlie said, is to act and to lead our programming, planning, and design team. This is something I've been doing my entire life, and my job within that role as the leader of the design team is really to ensure that we get exactly the right building, the right solution that meets your mission and the resources that you have. That's my job to do on this project. I am a little different than a lot, I think, of justice designers that have spent their careers doing what I do. My entire working life has been serving on justice projects. I'm a little different in that I have worked on both courthouses and corrections almost in equal numbers, and that's been my background for 30-something years. That's all I've done. Nothing in my career, though, has given me greater satisfaction and more sense of accomplishment than working on facilities that serve our troubled youth. Providing some contribution in making a difference in their lives, their families' lives, and in the communities. We know that for a majority of youth that come into the juvenile justice and service system, that they are at a critical juncture. They're at a fork in the road. And with the proper intervention, they can be led down a path that leads toward productivity and healing, or they can stay on the same path that generally has resulted in some shattered lives and sometimes even institutionalization. And we think that can, in fact, a positive intervention can make a difference. And I want to introduce a very simple idea
that architecture can play a significant role in helping make that difference in our youth. The configuration and design that we come up with your staff can really assist in two kind of overarching ways. First and foremost, how architecture can play a role is it can help deliver a more effective service. It can also enhance the collaboration between the providers that work within the facility. And those are two kind of areas that really can make a difference. The second area is that with proper planning and design, we can have a more normative environment for our youth, and that it can provide a structured and safe environment as well. It can also have a significant impact on the perception of the youth that's within the facility and their families that are impacted by it, perception by the staff and the providers, and also perception by the community. And we think in these two overarching ways, this is where architecture can really make a difference in the lives of youth in Tarrant County. Too often we find that juvenile justice facilities are difficult to maneuver within and navigate. You have to go from one end of a complex to the other just to find simple, to get assistance and your needs met. Too often we find that service providers really work within a silo of kind of their specialization because of the barriers that may be presented with location and where they are within a facility. And architecture, again, can begin to break those barriers down. And lastly, too often we find that the perception of the users, staff, and community is one of a facility that is both punishing and punitive rather than helpful and healing. And that also is where architecture can make a difference. Now, what special skill sets do we bring to the table? What special knowledge do we bring to the table that can help make a difference in the youth of Tarrant County? I think we, again, think there are two very distinct ways. We rely on two main design approaches. One, we utilize an evidence-based design approach that is rooted in restorative justice. And two, we use a lean process design approach toward really streamlined delivery of services, really figuring that out with the county and the providers so that services are delivered in the most collaborative fashion as well. Two examples of projects that I want to show you. This one is under construction. There's a lot of similarity to your project in this one. This is just housing. There's no courts with this one. It's a new addition to an existing. We need to speak up.
Thank you, David.
This is an addition to an existing complex. Adds 128 beds. It adds a library, part of the learning center. And it renovates a substantial part of the existing facility. All those are components of this project. One of the things that we talked about, restorative justice principles and having a more normative environment, this project does that in a very simple and straightforward way. You can even see where a lot of daylight is introduced into the building. In the Learning Center, we really kept it in a very normative environment. As we were walking through the facility, we really noticed the great care that has been given to those classrooms and the focus and importance of those. And we think that is kind of evidence in this project. This project is in Baltimore, and it is under construction right now, due to be finished in about a year. The next project is one that I recently designed. It was completed in 2013. This one is so very close to what you guys are doing. It is in Georgia. It is a 72,000 gross square foot courthouse, has 4 courtrooms like your program. It was a very simple building. It, again, is built on an existing complex. It is a juvenile justice courthouse alone. This courthouse has gotten lots of attention and notoriety. Annie Casey regularly, which is one of the groups that is very involved in juvenile justice, regularly holds meetings in this facility. And again, it's a very straightforward approach. But one of the really unique things about this building, and I talked a lot about delivery of services and how architecture can make a difference. This is really evidenced in this building. We really reorganized the program of this building. Literally, just for example, we took the lower floor of this building because of the tight site. It had to be at multiple floors. But we took the lower floor and said the public gets their services on that lower floor. So staff and everyone comes to that level. We treated it almost like the meeting complex at a hotel, for example. We kind of used that analogy as we were designing it. Staff is on its own separate collegial floor. It's a very collaborative type of design where they can interface with one another on an ongoing basis. We also made the courts and the remediation rooms high up in the building, really literally as the last resort. We want things to get worked out with these youth before they ever get to courts. And that set up a hierarchy in this building. And that opportunity also presents itself, we think, with your courthouse. A couple of other things, you see that it was very simple architecture, very light, lots of views to the outside, a lot of daylight, but very, very simple. And you notice that it was done very inexpensively, and we're very proud of that. Last word, please.
What county in Georgia is that?
Clayton.
Clayton.
Mm-hmm. Judge Stephen Teskey is the judge there. You can Google him. He's pretty well known. But it was a very fun project, and it's one I was just absolutely honored to be involved in. This board up here, obviously we had an opportunity to walk through the site. We are not presuming that we have any design ideas at all, other than we can't help ourselves to begin to look at what are the opportunities of all of those things that I just talked about that we can actually do on your site. There are lots of opportunities. Obviously, we're going to add a courthouse and some new housing and do some renovation. But those moves are going to take us in a direction that is going to set the direction for this complex for the very, very long future. And so we know that these moves that we make now have the opportunity to allow us to do things in the future that will have some significance. There are lots of different ideas that can be generated from that. Those are just a few that I just sketched out. But that's really not the important thing. During the course of this programming and planning, we're going to develop lots and lots of these kinds of ideas. But the real thing that I want to talk to you about is something that we pride ourselves on, we think we're very good at, is how do we take all these ideas and vet them out? How do we decide which one is exactly the right solution, for Tarrant County for this project? We do it two ways. One, we have a qualitative and we have a quantitative analysis that we put together. On the qualitative, we're looking at how do the operations that we've designed, how is the mission met both now and in the future, and we add scoring to those components, which gives us a way of actually putting a numerical value to any of these schemes that we might choose that we say meets the mission. On top of that, we do a quantitative analysis, which really begins to look at operational costs, maintenance costs, construction costs, all of the other financial items here, and we look at the total life of construction, the total cost of ownership, really, of this building for, say, whatever period we choose, 25, 30 years. Dewberry is very fortunate that we have all of that kind of engineering within our group that allows us to look at operational and maintenance costs. Adam and his group will play a key role in here in looking at what the cost of the heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and our sustainability issues and how they play a role in too. We think those two items that really help us make firm decisions, help you make those absolute correct decisions about which direction we take this in, because we're analyzing the function, the mission, and the overall cost. That's our presentation. I think we're right at 20 minutes. Am I correct?
Pretty close.
Questions?
We have questions. Obviously, this one is a youth center you're doing. Under Charles, under yours, as well as Richard, what are some of the others of these that were youth centers? I don't see anything specifically, Charles, under yours that indicates that they were youth facilities. Under Richard, I see the Clayton County, but are there other ones on there in those justice centers that were specifically set out for juvenile?
I've worked on a couple different juvenile facilities.
Okay.
My Steuben County, Indiana, is one, but I do work on a lot of jails and a lot of courts facilities. And with the planning that Rick brings to the table, he brings the most of the juvenile justice knowledge to this group.
I've worked on, I'm going to go back to what I said at the very beginning. I've done courts and detention and youth centers, some together, some absolutely separate. I've worked on courthouses as far away as Akron, Ohio. I've done a lot of detention housing within the state of Georgia over my years. A lot of it has been especially in the renovation side of things, where we've actually taken their system and went back and looked at, how do we modify and repurpose over a number of years. So my involvement in that really goes back a pretty long way.
You have met and discussed the needs of Tarrant County with a panel of stakeholders, right? And you have walked through the existing facility.
That's right.
Can you summarize your understanding of the scope of this project?
Yes. I think, I'll summarize it in this way. Here's what it says in the RFP, and that's our official, I think, take on it. But our understanding is that we're going to do a courthouse, and we're going to repurpose the existing office space in where courts is now. We are going to build some additional housing to the complex. Okay? Now, the degree of renovation that we do and how that's reorganized and or repurposed, that is not clear, and I think there are still some possibilities there. And I think when we talk about these schemes here, that's really kind of what I'm thinking through in my head, is really beginning to say, what are the possibilities? Now, obviously, everyone's got a finite, resource to work with, and we'll have to do that. But we want to make sure that whatever we do, based on your finite recess, that when we move forward, even beginning to look at this, we're all in sync, that we're absolutely moving. This is the scope that we want to do. This is our budget, and we're going to bring you schemes that absolutely match those.
Yeah, that's why I was a little hesitant at first, because we were hearing different things. Rick was saying that, yes, we know that you're talking about some courts, 4 courts and some housing, but we were hearing some different things as we were going through the facility. So what we want to do is make sure that we're working with your stakeholders to get to that finite definition of scope so that we can design to that. And that'll be our charge right out of the chute.
In the Clay County example, you mentioned a multi-level building,
yes,
which serve a purpose to achieve the mission. In the scope, it called for a single story. How are you going to be able to rectify that difference?
Can you put that board up a second? Sure. Actually, we've actually thought about that. So I'm glad you asked that question. Tim raised this question with me the other day. Said, how do you take something that in a vertical system, it was fairly easy to say, hey, we'll just put them on floors. But think of those 4 floors as quadrants, okay? For example, which you can do on a one level very easily, that we have a quadrant that is for where the public go. They don't move throughout the facility unless they're going to courts. But we want to limit the people that are going back into courts. Every time people do that, there's more risk, there's more confusion. So we let the service providers take up one of those quadrants. Say mediation takes up one of those quadrants. And then the 4th one may be the courtrooms itself. And so that you can take this exact same approach that we did vertically and do horizontally. Actually, it would work quite well, we think. The schemes that we had on the board before are there's a couple of variations in there. Some might be 2 floors. And 3 of them were single level. So we think we can absolutely accommodate that very idea right there, which has proven to work very successfully. Judge Teskey has written in great detail and spoken across the country about what their rates have been in terms of people staying in school, caseloads coming into their system, not just as they've integrated new programs in, but also after they've moved into this building. And we think the building has, in fact, had an impact on that.
One more question.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned security to be the number one priority, which I tend to agree with you, but you also talk to the significance of a design that is conducive to rehabilitation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you balance that? Because right now at the current Juvenile, I don't think security is very good right now. So
Can you put that on the board up?
how do you,
Schemes?
can you speak to that observation?
If I can, before I answer exactly your question, I want to say something about Mr. Smith back there, because I think this is very important. If you didn't understand this, we're one of the very few people that have a very significant security consulting group within architecture, okay? Tim and I, at the very beginning of any design, we're looking at security not for something that you just add devices and things to. We're looking at how we can make a difference in the security of this from the day that we began the earliest sketches. And that's something that we're very proud of and we think makes us unique. How do you balance those two things? I think one of the ideas would be to use that quadrant system, again, or have the public on the lower level where they're receiving services. Have the staff and providers go to them. That's what's been effective to them. We introduced some technology into that, where literally, if you're sitting at your desk and you're on the second level, you can grab your computer, go down to one of the meeting rooms, have your meeting with the public, and go right back and never miss a beat. But again, we're not letting people, that's being served, just kind of filter through the entire complex, keeping them in a very limited zone. That is one of the best things you can do for security right there, is limit movement. Keep the school in the learning center in an intermediate zone and make sure that we organize that, because they're going to have service providers coming from the public side, but they're also going to have youth coming from the living side, the private side, so that we make sure that we contain that in an envelope, and then make sure that we've got living where the youth are residing as in the most secure zone all the time. So zoning is really probably the greatest way of balancing that. But I think the way you interact with public is also one of the ways that you can balance that really well.
Thank you.
You indicated that the 3 engineering firms that you will be using are all hub businesses. What percentage of your team does that represent?
That would represent about 50% of our team.
Any other questions?
If I could have just one final closing statement, if I may, Judge. But once more, we'd like to thank you for your time and interest in Dewberry. Through our discussion today, I hope that you can see the professionalism and the passion that will be brought to bear on your project as well. We hope that you see us as the most qualified for financial responsibility and to bring you a safe and healthy quality of life environment for your facility, and to provide a design that is an integration of people in place. This is the most important project to us. It is our passion, and it's exactly in our wheelhouse. I've got this. I've got your back. We've got your back. We want to be your team. We look forward to working with you and the Tarrant County staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is your step, sir.
Thank you. We'll take a short break for the next firm to set up.
I'll adjust it, that's fine.
Very well.
We're live.
Thank you. Look at y'all, too.
We're bow tie guys. I don't want to string that.
like to present our next presenter, Walter Ridley, a consultant with HDR Architects.
Thank you. Imagine a 22nd century.
Walter, hang on a second. We're not projected yet.
We're not?
Here we go. Here we go. Okay.
Okay. That's the prompt? Okay.
Here we go.
Just imagine a 22nd century, all-encompassing, fully functional and operating court-focused center, which is conducive to an environment that produces positive youth development, at the same time maintaining the safety and security of the courts, staff, youth, families, the community, and all involved. Imagine a single-level, one-stop juvenile center that houses the relocation of 4 courtrooms, staff support offices, secure and designated parking for judges and staff. Imagine a juvenile center that makes the courts more functional and efficient while improving services for families and all involved. Imagine a juvenile center with new pods conducive to youth growth and their development, where the need for secure beds decreases and treatment increases, and where youth are served locally and closer to home. Imagine a juvenile one-stop center that is equipped inside and out, from bricks and mortar to programming, with a full continuum in place to support youth from their initial contact with the courts through their release back to the community by addressing their needs, inclusive of mental health and trauma, with the goal of ensuring the experience with the courts is a positive one. Imagine a decrease in the cycle of deviant behavior and continued delinquency, ultimately decreasing recidivism and the chances of a juvenile journey that would lead to adult criminalization. Our team is committed to building on the incredible progress that Tarrant County has already begun. Your positive youth development, community-based advocate-directed diversion programs, TCAP, and community involvement, just to name a few. So you can continue to provide excellent services and your best practices can be emulated throughout the world. Our goal is to bring your imagination to life by working collaboratively with you to build a well-designed and state-of-the-art one-stop juvenile center that will improve the overall function and operation of your courts. We offer the most unique set of services specific to your court's needs. Our team's group of professionals includes juvenile-focused corrections consultants, community corrections programmers, jail and detention center designers, construction specialists, former jail administrators, architects, engineers, and operations specialists. We know we can provide input for every level and phase of design and construction, and we know we can assist you with operations after the one-stop juvenile center opens. I close with saying this: we've got the plan, the people, and the passion to make this a reality for Tarrant County, Texas. Thank you.
So following the RFQ process and the facility tour, we took a step back and we tried to take a look and to analyze and to imagine the possibilities contained within your site and your project. We understand that there is some planned demolition. It's a little bit subtle, so I'll go back and forth. Up in the left-hand corner, there's some planned demolition of the existing older housing units, the courtyard and the classroom. And we would start realizing that the most sustainable thing we can do is reuse the existing stock of buildings we already have to analyze and assess the existing facility. And with that demolition, and realizing that up to this point, the plan has been to relocate the new facility on the eastern portion of the site. We believe that with that demolition, it raises the possibility of other opportunities. So there is an understanding that there are possibilities on the east and on the west, and then even in the future, in terms of future growth further to the east and potentially even to the north. Realizing that currently the access is from the south and the west, and whether or not this opens up the possibility in terms of secure parking and other things, whether there might be access from the north. Critical in all of this is circulation. The connection between the courts and the detention area is really the backbone of the facility. It really sets everything else in motion. It has to do with efficiency for staff, for the facility, for everyone involved. We realize that in these facilities, one of the things that's absolutely necessary is a clarity about where the secure areas are, where the non-secure areas are, public, being able to do that both inside the facility and outside with parking from the time that they first arrive. Access is always, as I mentioned, from the southwest. And by the way, I tested this with Google Maps. I actually, before the facility tour, had lunch nearby, and I kept driving eastward, trying to see if it would route me around the other way. It always routed us through this lower southwest corner. And what that allows, whether the new project, the new facility sits on the west side or on the east side, there is an opportunity to provide an appropriate civic presence for the facility, an appropriate presence for the judiciary, and an appropriate presence for the facility in general overall. The other thing, while we have these kind of aspirational ideas for the project, we realize that there are also some absolutes. We realize that with this very simple but interdependent diagram of budget, scope, and quality, that while some of these aspects may adjust and may change over time, that no matter what, they always have to be balanced and relate to one another. They're integrally linked. So what we'd like to do here is to take a couple of projects and illustrate some issues that we've encountered before that may be the same kinds of possibilities and opportunities that you may encounter here. So this is the San Francisco Youth Guidance Center. The blue is all the existing facilities. There in the lower right, the courtyard rectangular building is the existing courts. So here, the first move was to put all the kids in the housing units that are yellow. That opened up an area in the middle, the pink area, for first phase demolition. That then allowed us to weave in a new juvenile facility that once that was ready to go and the kids could then move in there, that initial housing could be demolished and making way for what is essentially outdoor recreation space, and then providing appropriate landscaping and buffering, setting in an existing community context. This is that civic presence. It's a phased demolition, phased construction project on a fairly challenging site. But for us, it's not just so much about the view from the outside, but it's also the environment that's created on the inside. This is one of the housing units, and trying in each one to incorporate public art in every single housing unit, not just in the public lobby, making a space appropriate for staff who in many ways are really the long-term residents of these facilities. Thinking about things like flooding it with natural light, using softer materials like wood doors that actually can be, if they're damaged, they can be taken off, sanded, resealed, and put back. And then simple things, like as if we can get light sources out of reach and out of sight. We no longer need expensive detention-grade light fixtures, but now we can actually get a better quality light that creates a better quality environment with a hidden source. So this is a National AIA Academy of Architecture for Justice citation winner. These two projects you know. These are your Tarrant County courthouses done by LBL architects, both LEED certified, both done through a CM at risk process.
Are you right here? What? That's the gold building.
Is that him
there.
right there in the picture?
That's gold surfing.
I thought maybe he was waving back from
I
the,
was
okay.
looking to see if I could see.
He's an envy.
Very, very top window, but he reminded me that he's a forward.
Oh, okay. Well, so you clearly know these buildings very well. You know them both from the outside as well as the inside. These are two particular, and these are two adult courts. There are also possibilities, this particular facility, the circular courtroom here was all about an idea of collaboration and bringing in concerned parties all associated with a juvenile case in many ways to deal with the treatment of each individual youth on an individual basis. In this process, we use a lot of different tools. We use workshops, we use scale models to try to flesh out the ideas, the operational desires, but then we also believe in testing those ideas in full-scale mock-ups as well, to make sure that in the end you're getting what you expect to get, and that it's what you want. This is another facility, the overall facility on the left, and a blow-up on the right, where the circulation is, again, one of the key components. It links all the various detention areas together. They come together, they actually dual purpose the visitation space for court staging for the kids. That's the light blue area. Then the yellow is both the public entrance and the public waiting area. And then they both come together, although entering from different sides, the lavender piece in the upper right, which are the courtrooms themselves. It has on the left an appropriate civic presence towards the public, but then on the right it also has an appropriate expression for the detention side, this being a covered outdoor recreation space. And Johnson County, Kansas is a project that, if you'll excuse the poor quality of these photographs, they actually illustrate some very important ideas. And that is sitting down very early on, establishing your goals, setting up the needs versus wants, and setting up your priorities, and then applying those ideas specifically to the site through a series of iterations and testing them. In this particular case, it ended up as a scheme organized around an outdoor courtyard, such that every element of the program receives direct and natural light. View of that courtyard below and up above. This is the first LEED Platinum juvenile facility in the country. This and one of the facility's attributes, it's stone on the exterior, not because stone was a great idea, but because it is literally the foundation and the bedrock of this particular place. So it's trying to be responsive, locally available materials, and responsive to that place. This last project is a small little Indian reservation project where the dark gray is an existing facility that's completely surrounded by existing buildings. And what we're trying to do here is to find an appropriate way to link the old and the new, bring them together, fill the space appropriately with environments that are necessary, filled with natural light, reuse the existing facility. And in this particular case, given that the tribes had a very limited long-term maintenance budget, with the exception of that small piece of existing stucco on the existing building, there is no paint in the entire facility. Simple, basic, natural, locally available materials, light from up high, light from down low, balanced throughout.
LBL Architects and our engineering team has a good working relationship with Tarrant County. With the sub-courthouse in Arlington and the Northwest sub-courthouse, we have a proven record of delivering high-quality, LEED certified, yet sensible projects in budget. We've been following the juvenile service project for quite a while, but we knew that we'd need to have a national expert with juvenile service experience for this project. So we searched and searched, and we found HDR to be the best teammate for us to team up with. When you look at their juvenile service experience, it stands out as the very best.
I've been with HDR for 21 years, and just all of that has been here in North Texas. Most of the work I've done has been here in North Texas. And in terms of the way we work, we are a national practice. We always like to find the best of the best in terms of local partners. And we're proud that in working with LBL, I believe they've just been named the top small business in Arlington. And of course, that goes along with the past work and I think the very good work they've done for Tarrant County. So that's the kind of culture, the kind of practice that we want to work with. Walter, whom you heard earlier in the presentation, first I want to point out about Walter that he is a diehard Cowboy fan. He is hails from the Washington, D.C. area, so I think he needs to be patted on the back for that. He's held out. He's held out. Walter also, Walter has been recognized with the highest award given in American corrections, the ER Cass Award. And that recognition is due to a lifetime of work as in operations, in detention, as an administrator, and then more recently as a consultant doing projects around the country. Now, Walter is out of Washington, D.C., but he is assisted here in Texas by James Smith, who is with us today. James has 5 years background as the Deputy Director of Texas Youth Commission. Mark, in talking about design, Mark has over 20 juvenile projects that he has done. And of course that gives him a tremendous breadth and depth, a whole lot of options that he can bring to you. But what should be pointed out about Mark is design excellence. He's been recognized 3 times in the last 10 years for innovative solutions with National Design Awards for the kind of expertise and passion he brings to his projects. Our team, a lot of our team members are here today, back here. They can raise their hand or stand up. But yeah, there we go. There they are. I'll point out that Paul Chestant, Paul, like Walter, has a background actually in juvenile corrections. He was the Director of Facilities for the state of Louisiana. He is an architect. He is the project manager on this project, but he brings that owner's perspective on what an owner needs, that long-term look. He has worked with Walter on other projects, and so they bring that history of working together. John Neeson, I don't think you'll find a project manager anywhere that has done more courts than John Neeson has. His resume in national and particularly in Texas courts, he can really help our clients work through their solutions. And it's those little things that matter, the little details that we talked about in the model earlier. Our engineering partners, these are firms that have worked with Tarrant County. Actually, both of these firms work with LBL on the courthouse projects. Dennis Schultz with HDR, and Dennis right here. Dennis actually started the HDR office here in Fort Worth back in the 90s. And then as far as specialty consultants, these kind of projects have so many little things that really make them go. And HDR, with the resources we have, there's no specialty area that we can't cover. So we've got those guys to help us. I'll put these all together. It's 6 small business and 7 Tarrant County leaders, discipline leaders that are actually putting this project together. We are a national practice. All these dots show that. Those are justice projects around the country. I would point out that we have 20 years of background in juvenile facilities in Texas with the Texas Youth Commission at Dallas County, Bexar County, and Denton County. I started doing a juvenile work at the Charlie Cole facility in Denton in 2001. We just recently completed a update to their courts master plan for capital improvements looking forward. 600 courtrooms, 39 states, over 11 million square feet, over 200,000 beds. We've got people in our firm, we just focus on this. This is what we do. More detention beds than any other firm. Why this team? And you've asked us to talk about, why this team and what do we bring to Tarrant County. Just a few things. I would like to focus on what we call in your shoes. We've got folks on this team that have walked the walk of on the juvenile side of operations, as well as people on the facilities side, like Paul Chestant, operations, you've got guys like Walter and James. Proven experience of the Tarrant County team. You've got Tarrant County team members that have been working here successfully for 30 years. The budget and schedule performance, and we've submitted a lot of projects with our RFQ, but we've been under budget and within our schedule on our projects here in North Texas for the last 10 years. One of those projects that Mark put up there, it was the first LEED Platinum juvenile facility ever done. And so we've got that commitment to sustainability. It's reflected in your courthouse projects, and that's a commitment on all our work that we bring. So those are some specific bullets. Before we go to Q&A, I would just say that selection of HDR and LBL, you have a team that is passionate about juvenile facilities that are focused on kids. We bring a background in these projects of projects that are well coordinated and give you a good experience in construction. And it's always tough, but we believe our projects show that track record. So with that, I'll stop and field whatever questions you may have.
In your presentation, you already demonstrated an understanding of the scope of the project. But I would like to ask, in addition to that understanding, I'm sure you have walked the current facility. Can you speak to your observation as to what's the problems or what kind of problems have you observed? And what should we do differently to basically resolve those problems and build an expansion that can accommodate the future needs of Tarrant County?
Yeah, I'll give you, and again, I've got the whole team here. My initial response on that, on a big picture standpoint, I think that the big challenge is flow. Right now, getting these things to flow together, have security and having security zones that Mark referred to that don't overlap and don't conflict with one another. You've got a facility where you're delivering great programs, but from a facility standpoint, it's grown piecemeal like everybody has, and so it's just a matter of getting all those pieces to work together and to work to modern standards.
If I can
always
add to
look
that,
to Mark.
I think in many ways you're doing the right things right now by starting this process. Clearly, there's a need. I mean, there's an article from the Chronicle of Social Change that illustrates that Tarrant County is doing some great things programmatically. But from a physical structure standpoint, that separation of secure and non-secure is a challenge. Certainly the judges, it's a significant challenge, but it is for the staff, and by then association, it is for the kids and for the public. But you're going about it the right way. And so this ability to be able to take a step back and to see what's there and see what the possibilities are, and then to start to plan, to program, to master plan, to analyze the site, all of those things are the right way to go about it, to start addressing those things holistically.
I'd like to ask you how you will use Walter's understanding of criminogenic risk factors such as early childhood trauma and adverse childhood experiences. How will you use this knowledge in designing a facility that helps to address the interruption of those factors in a kid's life?
I can give an initial answer to that, and I'd like for Walter to follow up. And I'll give an example. What we find in doing these kind of facilities, whether it be juvenile or adult detention, is so important to have operations people involved. And a lot of that is just communication, good communication between your design consultants and your staff. Your staff comes into this eager to provide the best they can. They know the problems they face on a day-to-day basis. And of course, we bring we're trying to understand things that help us design better. Someone like Walter, who has been, again, in their shoes, and then understands from working with architects and dealing with plans and the kind of information we're trying to gather, it facilitates good communication between the design consultants as a translator. I mean, you're bringing together two groups that speak different languages. Walter's fluent in both of them. The example I was going to...
I'm trying to figure out if you're fluent in listening to both of them.
Well, and exactly. Well, and I'm glad you asked, and I'll give you an example. A recent project, actually, is a project we've just completed the design. It's about to be bid, and it was a renovation of a new intake facility for Denton County. And so we had a detention consultant, operations consultant, former jail administrator working with us on that project. And we were able to take their existing facility, and we have tripled the holding capacity and the property storage capacity with no increase in staff. And that is huge. You know, it's simply by our jail administrator and operations guy being able to work with the staff and talk through these things and how they are done. We've been able to work with them to reassign and reallocate their existing staff. And you've got the one-time cost of a new facility, but the operations, that's 85 to 90% of the lifetime of that facility. And so if we can help you reduce your staffing, that's a huge benefit, and it makes their life and their work easier. So that's an example. I'll turn it over to Walter.
One of the things we've done has been some research on trauma. We've determined that most of the kids that come into the justice system have experienced some kind of a traumatic experience. So we've developed what we call a trauma-centered justice process, whereas we come in with clinicians, people who are knowledgeable, who work with kids, who understand the behavior. The second part of that, the physical plant must be conducive to change. And that's what we're about. Designing and collaboration with you, a facility that's conducive to change. That change comes even in the simple thing like colors, pastels if necessary, the softness of the interior. Because most of these kids have come from traumatic experiences in the community. So we want to bring about that change two ways, through the programs, building on what you already have. Second, the construction of a facility that's conducive to change. That help you, sir?
It does.
Thank you.
Security is an obvious priority of a justice center. How do you balance that with design?
Okay. There's, again, I'm going to call on Walter here in a minute, but there's about three components of that. And that is, okay, there's security zones and how you establish those zones and how you enforce them. There's also technology, how you use technology to get that to work. There's also the what we call the physical security aspect of that, which is, the doors, the frames, the products. And so, when someone asks me about security, first of all, I split it out into those three because those are kind of three areas of specialty that all have to be integrated. And so it's important, and again, because this is what we do all the time. We have all those specialists within our firm. They're fluent in working together. And, Walter, again, on the things that are unique to juvenile services and how you separate zones. I know that's something he is passionate about. We actually got into a discussion about it this morning. So I will turn it over to Walter.
Well, there are really two types of security, physical security and program security. And you have to mesh the two together. When I say physical security, he mentioned technology. We talk about doors, access, and all of that. But when people are exposed to meaningful programs, the security threat is really lessened, okay? So you had to put the two together. They can't be separate and apart. So we got the physical security and the program security. Program security comes through staff, a compassionate staff, a staff who cares about people, because this is a people business. This is a people helping business. And so the staff that you already have, as I understand it, is compassionate. Your leadership is compassionate. and they're ready to move to the 22nd century. If that helps you a little bit.
We are looking for a juvenile director. I'm recruiting all the time.
I'd just like to comment that you mentioned that we could house more and more kids efficiently in this new space that you envision. I'd like to comment that we are trying to go in the other direction and house fewer and fewer kids based upon the programming that we add to them.
If you will recall, one of the things I said, that this facility, okay, will be designed so that you need fewer beds, because we're talking about diversion, one. Two, we're talking about programs where kids can get a toehold and re-enter without a lot of issues. And that comes with, again, collaboration with Tanner County, the families, the kids, the sheriff's department, the police department, the whole justice system, and the whole human services system has to be working collaboratively to make that work. And it does work. We've seen it work many times across the country, and we have that available to you.
And I appreciate the question. It gives me a chance to clarify the example I gave a minute ago about increasing. That was the mission in that particular case. That was a very specific case where the mission was to increase capacity and try to diminish and keep staffing down. And so that's what we went to work to do. And I would agree with Walter. You know, I think, and we're seeing this both in adult detention as well, is increasingly jurisdictions are trying to reduce incarceration and to change and address the factors that contribute to recidivism and to reduce their populations, whether it be adult or juvenile. And so I hope I've clarified that.
What percentage of your team is historically underutilized businesses?
I guess the combination of hub and small business is about 50%.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you all very much.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Need to get to IT school.
Thank y'all so much.
Yeah, we got over.
Okay, again, we plan to be back next week to ask for permission to negotiate with the highest ranked firm. If you could turn in your rankings to GK this week, we would greatly appreciate it.
Is there any other business? We're adjourned.